Okay, let me just take another quick look in some of the rooms and make sure everyone's where they should be. We've got to promote a couple more people. Okay, well, I think I've been deemed the host today. So I'm going to kind of do a brief introduction, and I will emphasize the brief because the real work is in these presentations that we're going to do. So today is our sort of public-facing meeting of our environmental justice group that's been working together. To announce them, we've been led by our co-chairs, which is Rosa Arenas and Polly Spain. And then the committee, or I should say working group, consisted of community board members Seema Reddy, Louisa Craddock, Michelle Parker, Marilyn Rosenberg, and we had a community member, Joyce, I think it's Bilick, but I'm sorry if I said that wrong, and you'll correct me, who is a very interesting community member, and from a sort of a background perspective, is on the board of the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, I should say, so brings us great domain expertise. And the purpose of today's session is we are going to be making presentations regarding our findings in our community board. As a larger context, our mayor has put together sort of initiative around environmental justice and has asked various constituents, including community boards, to make our recommendations. And this has been our work in doing so. Those recommendations will be made, I believe, in a week or so. Could be wrong on the time, but this was an opportunity to see the work that they've been doing. And I believe that we want to get continued community feedback as well as our board feedback. And I will say that we did put up a questionnaire on our website over the last month or so. And I think we did quite well. I mean, I think there was 40 plus, I don't know what the final ones, but 40 plus individual people came in and gave us community involvement, which I think it's something we should sort of consider as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to dive right into it. And I believe that, Rosa, you are going to start. They divided this up between the northern part of CB7 and the southern part. And I believe we're going to present the northern part first, then the southern. My suggestion is we do both presentations and kind of have a long Q&A, but I think it's kind of informal. So if there's some questions specifically to the north that we want to ask a couple, I'm sure we can. But I think the agenda will be to do one presentation and the other presentation, then to allow all questions at the end. Rosa, Polly, either of you want to add anything extra that I said?
Sounds good.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Rosa. And I believe if a couple people or maybe helping with you, but I'll let you talk about your specific section. And I am going to be, I didn't do it yet, but now you can share your presentation.
Thank you.
So I hand it to you, Rosa.
All right. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay. So Joyce, Bilick, Seema Reddy, and I took the northern end of our community board district, which is bound by Amsterdam Avenue on one side, Central Park West on the other, from 100th Street to 110th Street. And in this area, 26.7% or more of the total population is at or below poverty line, and 75% or more of the total population is a member of a minority group. And so that within this, this is the portal through the city's site, the advisory board that the city has put together. And this is how we determined that the northern section was an environmental justice section. So they divided it into two parts. So from 100th Street to 106th Street between Amsterdam and Central Park. And the total population in this area is 11,800. of which 77.1% are minority and 32% are below poverty level. And according to local law, an environmental justice area is a low-income community or minority community based on the US Census data. Low-income communities are those where the population below poverty is equal to or greater than 23.59% of the total population, while minority communities are those where the minority population is equal to or greater than 51.1% of the total population. And that is how they determined that the area between 100th and 110th Street qualifies as an environmental justice area. And so the second part of our area is from 106th through 110th between Amsterdam Avenue and Central Park West. And the total population in this area is 9,761, of which 72.4% are minority and 20.4% fall below the poverty line. So we had a survey, we created a survey based in part on the survey that the Environmental Justice Advisory Board created, but we made it specific to our areas so that people can identify if they lived in one of the environmental justice areas. And from our survey, we're actually higher than that number, Stephen. We're close to 70 now, and hopefully we'll get even higher. I'm gonna put the link in the chat in a little bit in case any of you haven't filled it out, or you can pass that on to other people you think might be able to contribute towards this. But from our survey, we determined that the top 3 environmental concerns, environmental justice concerns are garbage and pests. And I went on a walk through the neighborhood one day on a Sunday by myself, and I took 160 pictures of garbage, just so you know. So garbage and pests, in second place, fresh food access, in the third place, air pollution. And there were additional concerns that were identified by community members, including services for homeless, noise, mold and lead hazards, access to local recreational facilities and athletic fields, parks, and traffic, especially truck idling, and specifically truck idling on Amsterdam between 102nd and 103rd. There's a picture here where the Fresh Direct trucks usually sit outside idling. So there was a specific concern about those. So this is just a snapshot of the survey. The last time I checked, there were 69 responses. Hopefully there's more now. And you can see that 26.1% of the respondents live in the northern area that has been identified as an environmental justice area. So one of the big issues was garbage, and garbage was everywhere. Joyce, Seema, and I did a walk through Douglas houses one day to just get a lay of the land. And in addition, I did a solo walk through the rest of the neighborhood, and garbage was just everywhere. So one of the main things in Douglas houses is that there are not sufficient trash bins. There's one small bin for a 20-story building, for example. Elsewhere in the area, in preparation for garbage collection days, garbage bags line the streets and blocks, the sidewalks throughout the areas, and blast trash bags are, as you can imagine, no deterrence for mice. They can eat through cement, from what I've read. So it's not impossible for them to chew through garbage bags. And I can attest to, in the summertime, it gets so horrifically stinky when the garbage is laid out at night and left till the morning when it's picked up. I'm gonna backtrack for 1 second just to give you some information on me and how I guess how I play a role in this. I grew up on the Upper West Side in Manhattan Valley. I've been here for 44 years of my life. I'm 46 years old. And I am very familiar with a lot of the issues in the neighborhood. I live just outside of the environmental justice parameters, but not too far away. And I'm pretty sure when I was growing up, this area was included as well. So I do see a lot of things just on a daily basis and have seen them for decades now. So in addition, what we noticed in Douglas houses was these fences that seem to be blocking off benches where people can sit. They're also blocking off recycling bins. In addition, there are all these scaffoldings all over the place that don't seem to serve a purpose. So they're kind of far off. It's a little difficult to see from this photo, but they're not really aligned with the building. They're kind of far away. So we're not really sure what the purpose is. From what we understand, they've been up for about 2 years, and no one's clear as to what they're doing there or when they're coming down, but they are blocking some of the windows. I have another slide coming up where I spoke to a NYCHA resident who said that people are unable to open their windows because of the scaffolding, because of the dust, because of the pollution. And that, of course, has not been helpful during COVID times when people need more circulation. In addition, on a nice breezy day, they've been unable to open their windows. Another thing that I noticed on the solo walkthrough I did is limited access to fresh food in this environmental justice area. So what I took note, there are a total of 4. 2 I would say are more proper supermarkets. 2 are sort of mini supermarkets. One is Central Markets on 110th Street, and that's a pretty gourmet supermarket. They sell organic foods. It's pretty high end. Next up is Los Vecinos, which is between 108th and 109th in Amsterdam. And that's more of a butcher shop, and it specializes in Latin American food products, but it's sort of a bigger bodega mini supermarket. On 104th Street between Columbus and Manhattan Avenue, there's the Columbus Food Market. And that's, again, another sort of small supermarket with Latin American foods. The thing I'll highlight about this this mini supermarket is that I walked in and there were 3 columns as I walked in. One was, I didn't feel comfortable taking a picture. There were a lot of workers there, but one column to my right was potato chips. There was a column right in front of me that was all cookies and a column to the left that was all soda. Once you got past that, they had rice, pasta, they had a corner with fresh vegetables, and in the back they had meats. But what you're greeted with is really an abundance of sugar and salt and things that are probably not the best for your diet. And then lastly, there's an associated supermarket on 100th Street between, I think it's between Manhattan and Central Park West. And this is a low-cost supermarket. It's generally frequented by Latin American families because of the deals that they have. I didn't go into the supermarket, but it seemed a little barren and seemed a little sad to me, but this is what I encountered as I walked around. The rest of the area is primarily composed of bodegas and delis, which of course offer some food goods. You know, they have sandwiches and drinks and some basics, but it's really more about the chips and the cookies and some canned goods. So what I saw based on this walk is that there isn't much access to fresh food in this region between 100th and 110th Street from Amsterdam to Central Park. There is access to smaller stuff, but not necessarily a real supermarket that's affordable as well, with the exception of Associated. So another thing that was brought up in the survey was air pollution. And according to the survey, CB7 community members complained specifically about the idling of the Fresh Direct trucks on Amsterdam Avenue between 101st and 102nd, and the emissions of the trucks that are making deliveries to the shops on Columbus Avenue. That's Home Goods, TJ Maxx, Whole Foods. There have been also numerous complaints in the survey about all the parked cars on 100th Street between Amsterdam Avenue and Columbus Avenue. And respiratory hazard index for Douglas houses and its surroundings show that 79% of the New York State population has a respiratory problem with the lower value than Douglas houses and the surrounding areas. But this was something that was repeatedly brought up as a comment in the survey. There was a space to add in your concerns, and this was something that was brought up quite a lot. So Joyce, Seema, and I walked through Douglas houses one afternoon together, and we talked to a couple of members of the community, one of which was Darley Miles, who's a longtime NYCHA resident and a community leader. And he and I walked together behind Joyce and Seema, and he explained some of what I already discussed, but he talked about the issues, the long-standing issues at NYCHA One of which I showed a couple of pictures, and we have a few more at the end of the presentation, of the scaffolding that has apparently been up for 2 years and has made it difficult for members in the NYCHA development to open their windows, and they're just unsure as to what the purpose of the scaffolding is. One thing he mentioned in his own building is the elevators, and I've heard this from others before, so I'm sure it's not just his building. But there are constantly issues with elevators in Douglas houses. He gave me the example of two new elevators were installed in his building, and within a month, one of them broke down 17 times after the initial installation. And so that made it really difficult for residents on the upper floors. I believe his building was 20 flights, 20 stories, excuse me. And he himself is a senior citizen with back problems and sciatica, and he takes care of his elderly father. And so he said it was impossible to go up and down those flights. And this is something that happens with much frequency. He also discussed the mailboxes in Douglas housing. He said that they often have broken mailboxes and that this is something that isn't fixed. And a lot of people expect checks, for example. And so it's difficult to maintain the safety of your mail. People are constantly trying to find out if their mail has arrived, what's happened to it. It's a security issue. He also discussed the fact that in his building, and I took pictures of other buildings as well, where the front door locks are broken, the doors are wide open, so anybody can just walk in, which once again is a safety issue. At 875 Columbus Avenue, there was a water pipe burst, and a temporary solution has been installed, but people continue having problems with water temperature control. And when the pipe burst, there was no water whatsoever for 2 days, I believe he said. Garbage, as you saw before, is a major problem throughout Douglas. There just aren't sufficient bins for the number of apartments there are. So some buildings are 20 stories high with, I think it was about 9 apartments or 10 apartments on each floor. So that's a significant number of people to bins. And if there are only 3 bins sitting outside with that many residents, as you can imagine, that's pretty problematic. And once again, the issue of the fences was brought up. There are these fences that are covering most of Douglas houses. And I noticed that they cover a playground. They also, Darlie told us that they also cover some benches, which the senior population here really rely on. And there's no real understanding of what purpose the fences serve or how long they will be there. In addition, they block some recycling bins, which makes it impossible to recycle. So we did as you know, a couple walkthroughs, myself, Joyce, and Seema, and then I did one separately. On the first one, we ran across the community fridge, which is located on 101st and Columbus Avenue. It's the Ujamaa community fridge, and it provides food to the community for anyone to take without limit, removing the stigma and enabling residents with hardship to access fresh, nutritious food. While we were standing there, we saw people, at least 3 people come through and take food. One was an older Hispanic lady, an older white gentleman, and an older Black gentleman came to get stuff from the fridge. On my walk, I noticed that there was only one community center for this whole area. And I bring that up because I don't know how many of you are on the call that remember Grosvenor's Neighborhood House. And that's where I used to go when I was a kid to do after school programs. But now there seems to only be the Frederick Douglass Center, which is right on Columbus Avenue between 103rd and 104th. It's temporarily closed due to COVID, but it's a center run by the Children's Aid Society to provide essential services to children, youth, and families in the vicinity. It has a gymnasium, an outdoor playground, and classrooms for after-school programs, and it provides additional services to low-income and minority residents. I bring that up especially because there's just one now, whereas there used to be 2 before, because they're very important when you have limited means to have a space where you can go with your child to provide some after school, to get after school services or They also offer summertime day camps. And so these things are especially important for people in low-income households. So another thing I noticed as I walked around was that there is only one health center or medical office in the area. So it's called the Columbus Medical Arts Center. You can sort of see the picture here. It's between 104th and 105th and Columbus Avenue. But this was the only medical facility I saw in the whole area. There isn't a city MD, there isn't an urgent care, and it seems like one facility is a very small amount for this 10 block 3 Avenue region that we're talking about. And then lastly, I looked at community gardens. There are 3 community gardens in this whole area. There's a farm on Frederick Douglass property. And that sits on the former tennis courts of the NYCHA development. So it's Mobilization for Change Community Garden, La Perla Community Garden, and West 104th Street Garden. And they're open to the public 20 hours per week from April to October. I have to say that I did not go inside. I just took pictures from the outside. So I don't know much about what they're like inside. They looked very lush and engaging. I would be curious to know how many people within the community who are either minority or low income frequent these, but they're a great addition to the community, and it was beautiful. They looked really beautiful. They were well maintained. So these are some of the photos of the playground, the Frederick Douglass playground that's on 100th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. And I actually went on Sunday and it's been painted. So originally, Polly and I walked through here and we noticed that the slides and the camel the paint was peeling off of them. The park looked like it was in poor condition. But since then, we've taken these pictures where they were painting them in this neutral gray color. And on Sunday, I went and noticed that it's really nice. They've painted it with blue, red, and white. But there's still a problem in this playground in that the bathroom is not very inviting. Not that bathrooms should be inviting, but it looks pretty dingy. And there aren't sufficient benches in this park. So there's benches right along the camel and then around here. You can't really see them, but otherwise there aren't benches. And so I did hear a complaint from at least 2 or 3 parents that said that one of the things they wish this park had were more benches. In addition, they have these, I don't know what these are referred to, but I think they're sort of rubber tiles on the floor. They're black, which I remember playing here as a child. They get pretty hot, and it's hard to see this picture here unless I guess I can hide your photos to see, but this is the playground that I know Community Board 7 worked on 105th in Amsterdam, and the tiles here are red and white. We would like to suggest that the tiles at least be changed. The tiles are also sort of lifted in the middle, so I think it might be easy to trip, and they're only under the structures, which I've seen kids, they run all over the place here. So it would be wonderful if we could suggest retiling these and adding tiles like the ones on 105th Street that are red and white and might reflect the sun a lot less. And so one of the issues that we brought up actually at steering the other day is this athletic field. It's something that had been mentioned, I believe, by Barbara Adler as a concern by community members that some of these athletic parks are require a permit to play in them. So this is something we took a picture of. There's a field there that's a soccer field, and there is a sign that says that the field use requires a permit. I know that there was some issue over that at steering, so I won't focus on that too much, but it was something that we wanted to point out as well. And so here are a couple of photos. This is the Ujamaa fridge. This is Darley, person that I spoke with. And this was a donation. I don't know if you can see them, but they're mesh bags with canned goods inside. And so this is right next to the community fridge, and people were actively coming in to grab these. So once again, these are just photos of the scaffolding throughout Douglass houses. You can see here, this is the fence that's covering the recycling bins and some of the garbage. And these were just things that we noted as we walked around that we are citing as problems that need to be addressed. And again, this is garbage at Douglas houses. So as you can see, the bins are overflowing. It's just not enough for all the residents that live in each of these buildings. This is something that SEMA added in, which is the lead violations by community district. And there's some links here to that. And the public schools in the area, we have 4 schools and 1 private school. And these are just some final pictures that show issues on the sidewalk and the stairs, and then more of the construction going on that's been lingering. So I'm gonna pass it on to Joyce. Is Joyce here? I don't know if Joyce wants to add anything. That was the complete presentation for our side. I think SEMA is unable to speak, but Joyce might want to add a couple of words. Joyce?
Joyce is here, so Joyce, I think you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, Rosa, thank you. I think you covered it. And I like the way you inserted the photos. I think photos always make clear the many problems that we saw. So I think we're ready for a look at the southern area.
Yeah, so we'll do the southern area now, and then I think we'll do a full Q&A after that would be probably the best, my thinking here. So, okay, so let's hand it off to Polly to do the southern part of CB7. And Polly, you should unmute.
Oh, you're muted.
Polly, you got to unmute yourself.
Holly, you're muted.
We'll get through it, Louisa. I know, Polly, I know from time to time you have a little bit of a tech issue, so I'm wondering if that's going on as well. So Polly, you're frozen. So what I'm going to do is pause for a minute. If there's maybe ask. Okay, I think I see you. Can you hear us now, Polly? Polly, I'm just letting you know that we cannot hear you. And I would suggest that perhaps you jump off and come back in, and maybe I'll take a couple questions specific to the Northern District while you do so. But we're not able to hear you right now. Polly? So we can see you moving around, so the video's moving, but I'm not sure what's going on with the voice part.
I'm on Zoom.
Okay. So any specific, well, Polly, I would suggest if you can hear me jumping in and jumping out and trying this again. If anybody has any specific questions for Rosa, maybe we'll take a quick a question and then come back to it. So Barbara, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I had a question for Rosa based on the presentation you just gave, which was excellent. You mentioned the playground and compared it to the one at 105th Street. Could you tell me again exactly where that is? Because there's no reason why we can't bring that up in parks and see what we can do about getting that resurfaced.
That would be great. It's the Frederick Douglass Playground on 100th Street in Amsterdam. And I think it goes through 101st in Amsterdam. And then the athletic field is between 101st and 102nd. But I'm talking about the playground between 100th and 101st.
And does it have a name?
Yeah, it's the Frederick Douglass Playground.
Okay, yeah. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Okay, why don't we stick with a couple questions and we'll see you. And I'll have if anybody sees Polly pop back in, please let me know. But Paige, I know you have a question as well.
Hi, this is amazing. Thank you very much for this truly enlightening presentation. I live on the Upper West Side, and luckily I have a neighbor who monitors the trash collection, etc. But it can mount up. And one of my concerns is that do you feel that the Department of Sanitation does not recognize or do the collections as they should throughout your district, this environmental justice area? And what help can the community board do to at least improve removal of the rubbish on the curb and within some of these access spaces underneath scaffolding?
I'm gonna pass that question on to Joyce, because I think Joyce might have more information than I. Joyce? Joyce, you're on mute.
So I've been in contact with the, I guess, the superintendent of DSNY's for our district. And I'm not sure that there's more that he can do. But on the other hand, in the mayor's last communication regarding the services that the Department of Sanitation provided, he's encouraging community groups to work together as a community and bring to the fore issues such as we saw in that northern area. So I think it's something that we need to, and I'm not sure if it's through 311 or we go to that superintendent, but I'll get more information, and obviously we have to act on it and ask for an improvement in the service that's provided there. There shouldn't be such a pileup of garbage.
No, right, I agree. And if there's anything else that you think we can do, I know Stephen is actively looking for projects, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
And I'm quite happy to help, because it is if a rat can live on 100th Street, it's going to visit 88th Street. So this is in everybody's interest for a healthy neighborhood. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So I want to pause back and see, Polly, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. We're
Finally.
technology ready. All right.
Okay.
So we're going to
There you
move
go.
now to the north,
right.
to the southern part. And then everyone who has their hands up or any other questions, we will, we'll make sure that we get to everyone, but we're going to go now to this part of this portion of the presentation. On to you, Polly.
Yeah. I'm just making sure that my screen is going. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, so basically, what we have here is, what is environmental justice? A lot of people don't even know what that is. I mean, it's a pretty new concept. I know it was for myself when we first ventured down this path. So what we did was we kind of wanted to simplify definition for everyone. And here, as you see, environmental justice is where everyone should enjoy.
Polly, there's no picture.
Oh, I'm sharing though.
I can see it.
I think, again, I think I can see it. I think perhaps you're having some challenges, but I think the rest of us can see the picture.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. So, as I was saying, we came up with a simple definition in layman terms, whereupon we could explain what exactly is environmental justice. And so what we said is that it's something that everyone should enjoy, the same degree of protection from environmental and equitable distribution of environmental risks and benefits. Everyone should have equal access to the decision-making process in order to have a healthy environment in which to live. So why did we form an environmental justice working group? In 2017, Mayor de Blasio signed into legislation, local law 60 and 64, to codify environmental justice into the decision-making process. So the local law stated that a citywide study of environmental justice must be conducted. So as a result of this, it has to be available to the public. And also it has to include feedback from those who may be most impacted, such as low income communities of color and others who are suffering from low income. So here we have some of the environmental issues. This came from the advisory board's website. We put the link there for you guys to see here. So this way you can go on that website, look at the information and learn exactly what it is and what they're doing as an advisory board. So these are the top environmental issues and climate concerns. And what they did was they asked for a survey to be completed. So if you go to that link, you can fill out a survey, and they asked the public at large, what are the top 3 major issues that you're facing in your neighborhood? So it's not just heat and flooding, you know, there's such things as pests, roaches, rats, asthma, as you can see down here, but mainly poor air quality, access to healthy food, garbage, which was mentioned earlier, asbestos, toxins, secondhand smoke. So things that we don't think about every day, more or less, but you know, fortunately it's being addressed. So that this way we all can live a healthier lifestyle. So the Environmental Justice Advisory Board actually identified 2 areas of concern. So you already heard from the Northern District as far as the area and what concerns are going on in that geographic location. So we're going to speak to the southern section of our district. So this was the boundary here from West 59th Street to 66th Street between Amsterdam and 11th Avenue. So the following information was gathered by Louisa Craddock, Michelle Parker, Madge Rosenberg, and myself. So in this area here, you see it's called Lincoln Square, Manhattan. According to their data, the population is 9,253, with a percentage of 69.1 minority and a percentage below poverty, 19.7. We have a problem with those figures, to be honest with you. We feel that there's some kind of discrepancy. So we question, how did the advisory board, you know, define this data, or where did they get this data? Because when we did our surveys and walkthroughs, it did not reflect the data that they offered. This is a map again from the advisory board. And so as you can see, it extends all the way to Freedom Place, all the way to the river, the highway. This right here is Amsterdam Avenue going west to the river. And so what they did is they defined that area as an area of critical concern. So here we have statistics. And the statistics are at least 23.59% of the population must be at or below the poverty line. This is what the advisory board uses as their guidelines. And at least 51.1% of the total population of that location or community should be a member of a minority community. So here we have some pictures, which I'm going to ask Louisa, because Louisa and Madge and Michelle actually did a walkthrough, and they're going to speak to what they saw.
I'm really sorry, Polly, but I can't see anything
I'm sorry.
on my screen.
Okay.
It's very frustrating. I'm very sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Can I say something, Polly?
Yes, go ahead, Matt.
I see the pictures, and what we found, there was such contrast between Amsterdam houses, which takes up not that much of the area anymore, and all these huge new buildings, which are taking up much of the area with a very big population. It might not be all rented yet, but there's room for a very big population. So on the left, you see these new buildings, and on the right, you see the Amsterdam houses, which were built in 1948. That's all I wanted to say.
Right.
And if I could just add something, it's very interesting. The Amsterdam houses was built in 1948. It was built on San Juan Hill, which was a Black and Puerto Rican neighborhood. It was considered a slum, and it was basically razed when Lincoln Center was built in 1956. So what has happened is that the whole area has gentrified around Amsterdam houses, and which makes it a very interesting area to look at, but to look at in terms of research. But it also means that once you get out of Amsterdam houses, and we did find that there were a number of very, very good systems that work in Amsterdam houses, but there are other areas close by, such as the area of Riverside South, which has parks and it has playgrounds. And there are other parks and playgrounds that surround it that are available to the residents of Amsterdam houses, because that whole area around it has gentrified.
There are also parks within. There are several basketball courts. There were two playgrounds, one in good condition and one in not such good condition within Amsterdam.
Louisa, do you want to talk about the trash compactors?
The garbage, I'm so sorry that I can't apologize enough. There are pictures there that show that there are garbage cans pretty much on every corner. There's also a very large trash compactor that we believe is for the full development. It was quite neat. The problem was that there has been construction for the last 2 years, and what they are doing is repairing the roofs. The western part of it has been completed already. They repaired the roofs or put in new roofs when necessary, and they repaired the cornices, and there are now also little gates and railings on top of the roofs. So there is no netting anymore, and the construction materials and the workers had moved out of the western part of Amsterdam houses. But the eastern part now is still draped in this plastic netting, which is mandatory. It is safety netting. And various areas have been cordoned off for both the storage and garbage. And there are a few pictures that show that also. But those have to do with the construction that is going on. There is a shed that kind of winds through it all, again, covered with this netting. Although there are lights underneath, we spoke to a young woman who said it was scary at night, and she would prefer if there were cameras also, because it was frightening. We didn't see anybody outside of Amsterdam houses who was Black. It is a very sharp divide when you go through Amsterdam houses and when you go in the area around it, especially in Riverside South, which is full of brand new glass buildings. Polly?
Well, even though you couldn't see as you were talking, I was flashing the.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so they could like relate to what you were speaking of. Okay.
Okay.
So I have, yeah, even though you couldn't see.
Yeah,
right. Okay. Yeah. So basically, what Louisa said is true. This is the netting. This is the walkway and the sheds, etc.
Holly, I don't know. Here.
Yes, Ethel.
Yeah.
Well, look,
Sorry.
Ethel, we're going to have questioning after the
I was
presentation.
just adding to one of the features here, but I'll wait.
Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to go into some information that we extracted from the Environmental Protection Agency. So what we did was we plugged in this address, 229 West 62nd Street, which is one of the buildings located in Amsterdam houses, because we really wanted to find out why did the advisory board identify Lincoln Square section, or part of the district, as an area of critical concern because of all the new buildings, the new construction, et cetera, going around in that area. We couldn't really understand it. So the questions that we asked was, why was it identified as an area of concern? Is it due to a study by the EPA? So we plugged the address in. And what we did was, this is a page straight from the website. We plugged the address in and it came up with the track number, as you can see here, 3606-101-5100. And it said cancer risk inhalation. So if you look here, the website, which is really a good detailed website, it gives you the breakdown on what that means. So you have toxic air pollutants, or it's expected of causing cancer or serious health problems. So the building itself that we plugged into that particular website said that from 2014, they identified that tract as having cancer risk estimates. If you look at the next slide here, this is a pie chart, and each color represents a specific chemical or toxin, and they give the percentage. So what I'm going to do is go to the next slide, because when you go to the website, if you click on, it'll pop up and give you information. So for the 33.6%, they said it was secondary, and they broke it down, and they said it has formaldehyde risk, benzene risk, carbon tetrachloride risks. And you see the colors that match. I highly recommend that everyone go to that website, plug in your building address, just to see what the status is of your building. This again, this color here indicates mobile sources such as cars, trucks, and buses. Very detailed. It's indicated 11.97, and it talks about what impact it has. If you look down here, formaldehyde risk is at 48.09. That's pretty high exposure. The third one here says non-road. So we're talking airplanes, trains, lawn mowers, construction vehicles. As you know, there's a lot of construction going on in our area, and we have the helicopters flying over all the time. So these are the things that we really need to look at, even though this is from 2014, and I wish that they would have had more recent data, but we don't know the impact of those pollutants on the population in that area. Is there a high cancer risk in that area right now? We don't know that, and that's something we would like to explore. This is the breakdown here in percentages of each of the pollutants that have been identified according to the EPA in that area. So what we did also is, there's another link there as well. They break it down by air quality, water quality, energy, health. So I just said, let's just pull out one. So we did. And if you notice over here, this is at around 61st Street. And we're talking, if this is over here, I would imagine like Amsterdam Ave. This is Columbus, this would be Amsterdam. So between Amsterdam and Western Avenue, around 61st and 62nd. You see that purple triangle upside down? That represents toxic release inventory system. Now, I don't know if there's some kind of measuring device or machine there, because we didn't pay attention to that, to be honest with you. We were just looking at visual, situations such as the ground, potholes, scaffolding. We never really thought about looking to see if there are stations that are monitoring the toxin in the air. So that's why it's important to have data so that you can identify these risks. So of course, definitely we're gonna do some more research. And I found that to be interesting, that there is some kind of inventory system located right there. So here's another tool that they have, and it's broken down by air pollution, This is ICIS Air 63. So you see all these clouds all over the place?
Mm.
And I mean, this was all throughout Manhattan, all the way up to the 80s and the 90s. But I just felt that it was most important for us just to target. We felt like the area that they had identified as areas of concern. So it makes sense, according to the EPA, that would be an area of concern. Over here, you see this brown spot that's with an E? That represents energy, and it says oil. So again, what that looks like in reality, that's something that we need to find out. Was there oil spill there? Is there something under the complex? Because we have those high buildings there. Is there something underneath that we don't know about that they built on top of? Then you have this green balloon figure here that says carbon dioxide. So again, we need more information, but here they're saying greenhouse gas emissions. And so if you look all over the place, we don't know if they're stations or devices that are just measuring the air pollution. That's something that we have to figure out because it says 63 of them. So why are they there? We didn't even get an opportunity to really look at the other areas, but we just felt like, let's identify air, greenhouse gas, oil spills, and carbon dioxide. All right, so here's a picture. As we said earlier, here's the netting. Welcome to Amsterdam Houses. And this is a view of one of the building entrances. So as you walk in on other side, there's netting. That's scaffolding here, okay? And the same walkway. We don't know what kind of material is in here. We don't know if that's from the work that they're doing, etc. And then the scaffolding from 62nd Street all the way up to 66th Street on the east side of the complex facing Lincoln Center. And so we want to answer the question, what is environmental justice? So we came up with the statement and we're saying we all need environmental justice. We agree that there should be an equitable distribution of environmental risks and benefits. Living in a crowded city where neighborhoods merge and overlap, we are all affected by environmental and health hazards. The poor, however, and those who labor under the many burdens of discrimination have fewer options to deal with problems caused by our environment. So, environmental justice is a subject of concern to everybody living in this community district, borough, city, state, country, and nation, but especially so for minority persons living at or under the poverty line. So if you have any comments or questions, we'd be glad to answer them.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so what we're going to do is a broad one. One quick one came from a past chair, I believe, and community board member, Mel Wymore. And that was the website that you were referring to. He just wanted to know that one. That you were you had a website up. There was just a question. That's the
Environmental Protection Agency, EPA.gov, G-O-V.
Maybe you could post it in the chat. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's open this up to sort of broader questions. And let me just do a couple of things here to make help me with myself here. Okay. Well, I will move on. I'm having a little issues. Okay. So people want to raise their hand. We're going to do both panelists, and we were going to also let attendees and the community, and there's a couple in the Q&A. So I will ask Robert, and I don't know, Robert, you may want to say, this is for the Northern or the Southern or both as you ask your question.
Yeah, I'm going to combine my comments because it's a fascinating survey. And one of the things that impressed me when I came on the board in 2012, and Victor Gonzalez took a group, we went down to Amsterdam Houses. And I think, Madge, you might have been there. I was absolutely floored or streeted by the way that they manage their garbage with that compactor. I mean, you would think in today's terms that they had Amazon doing it with that efficiency. And then you contrast that with the problems that have been going on. And Rosa just showed us that here we go again with Douglas houses.
Mm.
Now, you know, Madeline might be online here with us, but, you know, we've collaborated with the Department of Sanitation. They've done special things and they've done this and that, and they did respond to the efforts by the community board and the Douglas community to make improvements, but you always wind up sliding back to square one. And I've always found that very mysterious. I just don't get it, you see? And, but so to see this again, and it just teaches us that in planning and in community improvement and development, you just gotta stay on it. So every few years you have to do this sort of thing. This is a lovely report, okay? And it's really comprehensive. And then when you do it in two parts like this, you do the south and the north of our district. I learned a lot now from what Polly's pointing out and the others of the pollutant content of the area. And there are things that we didn't know then because we all go to Lincoln Center, we all drift west and so on. And I would, personal note if you don't mind, because Thelonious Monk lived in Amsterdam houses. And one of the buildings has his plaque on there. I don't know whether that necessarily means national designation or local. Ethel, here we go again. But Thelonious Monk lived in Amsterdam houses. In the name of God, what more do you want, you see? And so now that you point out with the pictures what's happening around Amsterdam houses with the very high-end housing on the river and south and so on. And so you wind up with Amsterdam houses as an enclave of sorts. And Margarita Curet is very hyper busy there and a lot to do with the way, and I go back to the garbage because that's the issue. That's the issue. Pollutants is huge. We can't get around it, away from it, as we know. But I don't get why there's such a problem in the garbage. You go to other cities, you go to Toronto, you go to Montreal, you go to Barcelona, you can eat off the streets in these cities, okay? And we have enough people to do the work, willing to do the work. And I just don't buy that there is no money to put people to work and clean the streets and to package the garbage and to, you know, there's a big problem. It's a landfill issue and the whole thing, but that's the higher end of the problem. But I just admire the report that it impels us to keep at it and to pressure the city. And even if they've been very cooperative, Department of Sanitation, our local elected officials, and, you know, just a juggernaut in behalf of the quality of life in these areas. So that I'm very happy with all of this, that Polly Rosa team, very nice report. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah. It was very new to us as well, because, you know, as we were doing our research, we were discovering things that we weren't aware of going on in the community. So, you know, it's something that we all really need to look at it because it impacts everyone, whether you're, you know, rich, poor, black, white, it doesn't matter. We all share the same airspace, the same space. So,
and it doesn't matter, Polly, because now it's just across the street.
Exactly.
You're not on the other side of the tracks.
Exactly.
Right across the street.
Yep.
Okay? So we're in it together as we're learning the hard way. We're in this together. Sorry.
Thank you. Ethel, your hand is raised now.
Hi, thanks a lot. And I just want to make 2 or 3 points about Amsterdam houses and the area. I don't know, I can't remember the circumstances, but about 2 or 3 years ago, and I think that Michelle and I and a couple of other board members did go to Amsterdam houses because we wanted to, we were looking at the open space because we realized that the way originally that those NYCHA developments, and particularly that one, was built was that supposedly that there was open space surrounding these buildings. And when we were there, it was not too long before, you know, Lincoln Center and all that. And as we stood and walked through, in the middle of, and just one of the photos that you showed, Polly, there was a sort of an improvised ball game going on from the residents, the young people of Amsterdam houses. But here was the contrast, and that was walking through the same pathways that we see in Amsterdam houses of those photos were people going, the upper middle class, walking from the subways, from taxis, and going to all the buildings on the west. That is the contrast. And they were walking through Amsterdam houses as part of their getting from mass transportation to their, you know, fancier houses. And here they were going through these open spaces, a different population, and it was extremely striking. And a couple of us began to say, wait a minute, we've got to learn more about, you know, the connection now of that Amsterdam House is there and being ignored. And yet there are hundreds and thousands of people walking it back and forth in it, having no relation to it, but going to the west. The second quick thing is, a graduate student I know, and I think Roberta knows too, did do a big paper, I could send it to you, on the open spaces, the origins of Amsterdam houses and how they're used now. And it was really pretty useful. So I think that this is a great report in many ways. And I just want to give some examples. Oh, there was one other point, last, quick. When I think, and Stephen will know more, I think when the board gets to maybe the regular district service cabinet meetings and so on, that you would have the agencies there, and the questions you asked, why isn't there, or maybe it was Robert, why is there such poor collection by the sanitation department in the northern part of the district? Right. It's better elsewhere. And that's the kind of thing I think that the board could really be working on with the district, and really making it a target now to have equitable, truly equitable service and pickups for sanitation in the district.
Okay, Paige, did you have a follow-up?
Is it the intent, first of all, congrats to Polly and Rosa. We walk by this every day, but we don't understand why it's so different. So kudos to you. This question is really aimed at Steve. Is the intention that we can make or put to the board, I don't know how new committees are made, but be able to legitimize the work that has been done and build on it so that we can continue this? I think this is very important. I was surprised. Well, I wasn't surprised that we had two districts, but I'm surprised at the size of them and that they are both clustered around the lower income areas. This is just can't continue in terms of they should be as lush and as inviting as the rest of the Upper West Side. So if there is interest, I would support a motion or whatever one does on a community board to do this. I don't know of any other community boards right now that have taken this action. And I think this is very important for us to consider.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Paige. So this is a process. So they're going to finalize this part of it, which is going to lead to recommendations into the general committee. We will then post these online on our website. I believe the plan is now to then let this be part of our district needs statement, which you have Roberta and Mark on now. So that will have that effect. In terms of further or more presentations, I think we'll take that all into consideration. I think from a formal presentation, this was the opportunity to sort of let everyone know. But what I will tell you is that this work is not going to end here. We're in the beginning or in the middle, and the nuances of whether there's a formal resolution or something, I think we'll continue to iterate. But that's the pattern that we're talking about now. Okay, I see a couple other people. I'm going to go to Mark first. I do see Roberta. We've got Richard. We've got Louise.
Stephen, it's your call, but it looks like Roberta wants to reply directly to what you just said. So maybe you go to her and then me?
Sure. Roberta, then Mark.
Hi, thanks. So definitely this is something for the district needs statement, and we will definitely be working on it with both Polly and Rosa and also with Madeline to make sure that this is part of our district needs, especially in this period of time when we're just coming out of the, not really coming out, but hopefully coming out soon of the pandemic. It's very important work. And one of the things that wasn't included is one of the problems that we have, which is certain school areas have children with high rates of asthma. And part of the asthma is, Rosa, what you were talking about earlier, which is the cars emissions. And so certain schools within our district have children with really high asthma rates. We also have over 20% of seniors, and they also have certain disease patterns. So these are all things that we include in the district needs statement. So anyone that can provide us information, we'd love to have it, the sooner the better. Thanks, Mark, for letting me speak first.
And Mark, do you have a follow-up, or were you in unison in thought?
I would love to say I'm in unison in thought, although I of course agree with Roberta and look forward to making this an even more useful DNS by including this good work. So the first thing I couldn't be silent without saying congratulations and thanks to the whole team, certainly to Rosa and to Polly for such good presentations, but I know there's a bigger team behind. So thanks to all of you, and look forward to including that. One of the things that I was particularly impressed by, and so you'll suffer my further congratulations, especially when you highlighted the brownfield just to the south of Amsterdam houses, which I understood to have been part of the cleanup when they built those high-rise buildings that you highlighted in your report about the surrounding community. I was under the impression that part of the obligation of building on those sites, and that's across the street from what used to be it's now the West End Secondary School, and just next door to what used to be PS 191 and is now PS 452, that was supposed to be cleaned up. And if that's still on the EPA website, that's a problem, and one that's perfectly appropriate for the community board to to call attention to and so forth. So I look forward to working on that. The same thing with the power plant that was highlighted as the energy problem with oil and so forth. That's that McKim Mead and White power plant that's at 59th Street. And if that's leaking, or if that's creating problems, that adds to other initiatives that relate to that. So I'm delighted that your analysis didn't just stop at the border of the defined area and kept going. Same with the Douglas Houses area up there, because some of those problems spill over to or are affected by what's around it. It sounds like there's still a lot of work to do, and while I know there's a benefit to keeping the core team tight, there are many of us, I'm sure, especially after this presentation, who would want to take a small piece and run with it, or try to support what you're doing by some backup research. And so count me among them if there's anything useful I can contribute. And thank you again.
Definitely, Mark. We would love to have you on board.
Thank you. Richard, then Louisa.
Yeah, I want to add my voice to Mark's and Roberta's. I've been on the board a long time, and I have rarely been a part of as impressive a presentation as I had tonight. The work that you people have put in already is just an amazing feat. And I look forward, there may not be much that involves land use, but there may be, for example, with respect to the absence of supermarkets or something like that. But I think that these areas are sufficiently unique in our district that when we do our district needs statement and when we do our budget, we should bundle together all as points 1 and 1A or one, we should bundle together all of the problems that are confronting people in these communities so that the impact is not lost on, well, we need sanitation, that's number 7. We need housing, we need to have rehabilitation of the housing, that's number 12, the elevators. This is really the improving life in these areas is a single goal and ought to be developed in our district needs statement and in our budget as a single goal. One quick comment about the environmental study. I don't know how up to date the EPA figures are, but they may have improved somewhat since they were posted. And also, I think it would be important not just to show where the hotspots are in the affected areas, but to contrast those with air quality in the rest of the district to show that, if it's true, to show that it disproportionately affects minorities. But again, congratulations, folks.
Thank you. Louisa? You gotta unmute yourself.
Unmute.
She's working on it. Still muted, Louisa. Okay. Clary, do you want to go? And we'll see if Louisa can go after yourself.
I'm okay.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm obviously having technical problems tonight. Okay. I wanted to talk about this because we discussed this back and forth while we were doing the research, that the Committee for Environmental Justice set the rules for this. They said that you had to have a population that was more than half minority, 51.1, and also at or below the poverty line, which is 32,400 for a family of 4. However, all of these things affect them. All of these environmental hazards and affect them. But there are rats on 100th Street, but there are rats on 82nd Street. There was construction all over the Upper West Side. There are buses that idle on Broadway all over. So I just want to emphasize that people who are poorer have fewer options. But this affects everybody. And so we are helping how we all live in this community board, in this neighborhood, in this city, because we are all affected by these environmental impacts. Other than the ones that are in them, we're trying to get ACS statistics because a lot of the ones that we have are 2010 is just too long ago. So we're trying to get information for how the buildings are maintained on the inside. But the broader environmental concerns affect all of us. And that's why we have to research this and we have to act together.
Thank you, Louisa. Clary?
Okay, I absolutely join those who've really thanked and congratulated the members of the task force for the working group, rather, for the fantastic work that they've done. And certainly this work has highlighted to all of us what we knew, but didn't necessarily have as many details on, which is the extreme disadvantage of, in so many regards, of our neighbors who are in Douglas houses and Amsterdam houses, and that is very important to us. On a couple of other points, though, I live near the southern area and have some familiarity beyond what some others may have about it. I do find inexplicable, as I believe it was Louisa who said, or Polly, the definition of the southern area, because aside from Amsterdam houses, that area is more and more very high-end, large, new apartment buildings. And I also suspect that the EPA information about the toxins and the other stuff in their website is to at least some extent out of date. I think Mark is correct. I mean, that West End Avenue corridor has some really bad polluting stuff going on in many of those sites, which may partly explain, and there were other reasons too, why that West End was always a low-rise. There were zoning issues and other things too, but it was always a low-rise, non-residential corridor, and now it's completely transformed into high-end residential. But the other point that I want to make is that the kinds of environmental exposure that is the subject of the EPA site, as Louisa was just saying, really affects all of us. The two throughout our district, the two of the probably greatest sources of pollution and danger and causing asthma among our children throughout our district are automobile emissions and the burning of number 4 oil, and some buildings still burning number 6 oil, although that has been banned. We have old apartment buildings. We have a very high population density. We are in the process of a multi-decade conversion to number 2 oil and natural gas. And so the burning of the number 4 and the number 6 combined with, and actually natural gas has pollutants too, but combined with the high amount of automobile traffic we have from gasoline powered engines and diesel to some extent in our commercial vehicles, create basically clouds of pollution that affect really everybody in our district. So I guess that's the end of that story.
Thank you, Clary. So I'm going to allow, we have 2 community members that have raised their hands, Carmen Quinones and Beth Schwartz. So I'm going to allow Carmen to speak now. Carmen, if you unmute yourself, you have an opportunity to ask your question or add your thoughts.
First, let me thank Rosa and Polly. Thank you so much. It's so much that what we've been fighting here. And again, you know, we need everyone's help. We've been fighting against all the garbage, especially the playgrounds. We've been wanting to get those back. The Children's Aid Society also, because a lot of our children don't have where to go. Especially now. These are all things that I'm only one person, I'm only human. I can do for so much. I am just so overwhelmed at the presentation that you guys gave. And I am so happy that it is finally there because I need you guys. I can't do it alone. I've never pretended that I can do it alone and never will. But this is just what we've been talking about for years. Even now in Douglas houses, we were fighting because we were down 9 caretakers. Okay, my superintendent just left. Mr. Gibbs just left because for 2 years they were promising him to get him help. Now we have a new superintendent. We're trying to get 2 more assistant superintendents. And again, we are down 9 caretakers. We have 20 buildings, 20 stories. That's a lot of people. And we have a handful of, like, the picture that you took, Rosa, was me, the president of Douglas, Carmen, and Daryl. That wasn't Darlene. That was me that y'all spoke with. But, it's just, I am overwhelmed at the presentation you gave. And whatever I can do, I am there with you. I need all the help that I can get. I just want to thank you. Job well done.
Thank you, Carmen. So Beth, I'm going to do the same for you. Beth, you can speak now, and I know we've been QAing it up, but feel free to ask any additional questions.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. So, you're talking about like a lot of lofty goals, such as, switching to #2 oil, and even more importantly, natural gas has way less emissions than #2 oil. But I'm looking at the beautiful presentations and I'm like, why can't you guys get more trash bins for the Douglas houses? It's low hanging fruit. It's easy. And like simple fixes like that. Yes, you're not going to solve the air pollution issue, but you're going to solve the garbage issue pretty easily.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify some of the chat, and what I was trying to explain to you is that the community board doesn't function like that. We don't have a budget. We have no money to buy that. What we do is advocate. That's why we're putting this presentation together. We're going to continue to put it together. We've invited many elected officials and their staff, and they're here. They have budgets, and that's the purpose, or our role in that process is to advocate for people who have budgets. And so that's what we're doing. And I think that's the plan.
Right, but what about the discretionary budget of the community board? I mean, it's not going to cost.
We have no discretionary budget. We can bear it. We have no discretionary budget. That's what I'm explaining.
Okay,
none.
So the community board can't, it's like you have to rely on other departments to get the garbage cans for NYCHA.
Yes. And we rely on other departments just to fund ourselves. So we're hat in hand every year.
It just seems like a pretty easy fix. It's, again, easier than fixing air pollution, low hanging fruit.
We agree on the problem.
Okay,
We're just saying you were continued asking me to fund it, and we don't have the ability to do so.
Okay, great.
So that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sure. And I'm just going to click something here, and great. So I think that's, well, I'm going to ask, we're going to have one more hand, and then we're going to wrap it up, and it's about budgeted time. Joyce, I do see your hand up. So I want to give you an opportunity because you work so hard, and then we're going to sum up our report, and we're going to end the meeting. So Joyce, you will have the last word.
Okay, thank you. So in response to the last speaker about the low-hanging fruit of additional trash cans at NYCHA houses, maybe that's something that can be done. Certainly the NYCHA folks are looking at adding additional resources with respect to garbage collection. They're not really looking at recycling, which of course is another concern. And the next meeting of the NYCHA committee of the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board is going to include a very important person from NYCHA Sanitation, relatively a new manager, Al Ferguson. And we're going to ask him about what he can do. And there's a number of people from Columbus Houses who are participating with that committee of the Manhattan SWAB. So let's see what we can do.
Thank you. Okay, well, we're gonna end the meeting at this point. I again just wanted to add my gratitude and my positive words for both the group and our co-chairs. I think this has been a wonderful presentation. It's certainly exceeded my expectations. And as I had mentioned sort of earlier, the process, we're going to continue to, I believe there's a few more days, so if people want to go into the questionnaire and fill things out, but we'll continue the process. And we're not at the end by any means. I think we're, I don't know if we're in the middle, but we're somewhere along the process. So thank you everyone for coming. And again, thank you for the working group for their hard work. Thank you.